This is the Philanthropy Show, connecting and inspiring philanthropy.
Welcome to the Philanthropy Show. I'm your host, Luann Zaraga-Walters. In today's Spotlight on Adoption, we're looking behind the process, which, according to a 2012 study from childwelfare.gov, is a process in which 10 to 25% of adoptions can fail. And that means that the child is put back into foster care, often moved from school to school and home to home. And that life can go on for many years. There is a pilot program being launched in Tampa Bay with the aim of replicating it throughout the state and maybe the country, addressing the problems caused by disruption. That's when the adoptions fail. That program is being led by Camelot Community Care and supported by the Florida Medical Clinic Foundation of Caring. And we're honored today to have with us two gentlemen from those agencies, Mike DiBrizzi from Camelot and John Harper from the Foundation of Caring. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I loved, when I first found out about this program, the concept behind it, because I don't think a lot of people, are aware of the number of, that percentage is huge, 10 to 25%, yep. But that also the ramifications that it has for the child, for the family that the child is eventually adopting into, and the things that can be done to change that. What you're doing is huge. You are really reinventing the wheel, working out the kinks. So let me just back up by going through some of your backgrounds. And Mike, let's start with you. Talk to me about how this kind of came into being and how it came to your awareness.
Okay. So Camelot Community Care has been doing adoptions for a little over 10 years in Hillsborough County. And during that time, we have finalized a little over 3,500 adoptions from the foster care system. And as we got further along in the process, we started to hear back from families that we worked with and finalized for our program. And there were conversations, how do I get an issue with a birth certificate? Or, my child's uncle, who he didn't know, has come back and found out that we adopted and wants to get in touch with us. What do we do? And sometimes it could be more severe. Sometimes they may have adopted a child when they were 4 or 5 years old, and now they're 14 or 15 years old, and some of the trauma that they went through early on in their childhood is coming through as a teenager, in addition to the normal teenager things that we all see. So they're looking for help or looking for assistance, and there are good-natured organizations and people out there who are willing to help, but there's just not enough. There are right now a little over 3,000 families in Hillsborough County alone. That number goes up to almost 5,000 or 6,000 when you consider the whole Tampa Bay area. Families who have adopted whose children are still under the age of 18, and so there's become this need of organizations and agencies to be able to help them. And sometimes it's as simple as I need someone to talk to, or connect them to another adoptive parent who may have gone through what they have gone through. And we've started to think about this issue and say, we have the resources, we have the experience. Let's start looking at partners, and that's where the foundation come in, to help us bring this together and develop a program to organize all of the services that are around, that are there available to families, but more importantly, to organize families. Because what we did learn very quickly is that, for the most part, adoptive families lean on each other.
They make their own network.
Yeah, an adoptive parent, it's a special experience, and it's a life-changing, wonderful experience, but only they know what it's about. And so being able to talk to a neighbor who may not have ever adopted about an issue that may be coming along in the adoptive process, while they may be caring and they may understand and try to help, they don't have the same perspective that an adoptive parent have gone through. So another adoptive parent who may have experienced the same thing becomes someone they can lean on and help. And we thought about bringing them together. They know others, they may have gone through class with them, but what we know is that there are pockets of adoptive families all over the area by zip code or neighborhood. We could start bringing them together to help each other.
Well, what I like, that part of many things that you just said, but one of the aspects that stuck out to me was the statistics that you gave for Hillsborough County, which is just one county in Florida, but that this is actually going on statewide, nationwide. And John, from the Foundation of Caring standpoint, you're a foundation that is really actively helping organizations change community needs, reaching into the heart of it. Why was this appealing to the foundation?
The foundation has kind of a unique concept. Like other foundations, we stroke checks, which is the norm, but we have this other little philosophy. We call it 2 + 2 = 7. We're looking for those organizations, such as Mike's, where we can partner with them and have a greater overall sustainable impact versus just presenting them with a check and maybe filling one small part of what his need is.
And Florida Medical Clinic Foundation of Caring, you're based here in Tampa Bay. What's your reach?
Primarily Hillsborough and Pasco County at this point. Yeah.
So you're looking at a 2-county
Correct.
impact as well, and then you're thinking about branching this out depending on what the need is.
Yeah, our adoption experience is here in Hillsborough County, but we're a statewide provider of foster care and adoption services. So we have a reach and we have an understanding of families, of both foster families and adoptive families. So we want to start here. We want to be able to develop the program and then have it working and see what works best and start looking at helping other families throughout the state and maybe even the country.
So talk about this issue of displacement and how a child can be put in a home and pulled back out. How does that happen?
Yeah.
What are the general causes of that?
Well, I think you have to start from looking at how children can be led to being adopted in the first place. Children who went to, and we're talking about the foster care system. There are certainly private adoptions and international adoptions that everybody hears about as well, but we're focusing on foster care. A child comes into a foster care system because of the fact they've been abused or neglected in their biological family or whatever their living situation may have been. And just that removal right there, no matter the age, even at the very, very young age, you have a separation that's happened right there. They've been taken away from their family. And they work their way through the foster care process. The families, for whatever reason, isn't able to get their child back, and the child's rights are terminated with their parents. There's another separation. And so you have built-in 2 separations that occur right there, and those are traumatic experiences for children. They can recover from them, but it makes a stamp on their minds about what's happened.
I want to show our internet audience what you're talking about. We had the opportunity to sit down with a young man, RD, and his mother, now adopted mother, Tammy, the Curtis family, who can speak to that a little bit more. So let's take a quick look at this and we'll come back to that.
And I thought it was me, so I would work hard to do everything correctly. Worked hard in school, didn't joke around a lot. I, did all this stuff and it just wasn't enough. So I was just like, well, what could it be?
Hearing RD recount stories of when he was told he had to move homes, I've heard it before, but it doesn't, my heart is breaking so much right now, and just thinking of the pain and the suffering that he went through, and just knowing that that he was out there waiting for me and I was waiting for him.
You can imagine, when I hear Tammy say that to hear her son now and whom she's had for 3+ years and how much she loves him, and to know what he had to go through for the first 14 years of his life, thinking I'm in a place and then being pulled out, making friends at school and then being pulled out. He never went to school for an entire year until he was with Tammy. Yeah. And this is not unusual. This is what we're talking about when we say the 10 to 25% failure. Yeah.
It's not unusual. It's in children's cases, and there are a number of situations that may lead to them changing homes or changing families. Most of the time, it's never their fault. But no matter the situation, they tend to think it's their fault. Yeah. And again, that makes that imprint on their mind. So now they've moved through the process, and in RD's situation, he was able to connect with Tammy, and turns out to be this wonderful situation, and it turns out that they become a family. But he's got his whole lifetime of experiences that he's bringing to the table, and there are triggers that happen, change of things that happen, and he's thinking, what's next? Am I going to be removed from this home, or is something going to happen? And sometimes kids whose minds are still developing and they react off of emotions, not necessarily from logic but from emotions, and their reaction to that is that I want to push away. Or I want to make this as painless as possible, or I know it's not my fault, but I have to blame somebody, and they can act out towards that. So that becomes an issue, and families struggle with that.
I want to look more into that, Mike and John, and we have to take a break. But what you're talking about is exactly what we had the chance to sit down with RD and Tammy and discuss. And even after a successful adoption, a child who's been through years of disruption has that doubt. So let's take another look at one more clip before we head into the break.
His first week at the new high school, the teachers called me every day. The principal called me and said, he's doing fabulously. But at home, not so much. At home, he was acting out and just really upset. And it wasn't until the end of the week when I overheard him on a conversation, a phone call with my brother in California, where he said, Uncle Jeff, I love my new school, but I know what happens next. Somebody's gonna come knock on the door with a garbage bag and tell me to get my things.
This show sponsored in part by
My Paper Pusher. Consider it done.
Follow the Philanthropy Show on Facebook for behind-the-scenes action, polls, and commentary.
Like, there's sometimes where I'm kind of upset and like kind of like that, and I'm like, why am I upset? This is where I'm gonna stay at, and it just makes me a lot better that I finally have a place where I can stay in one place and just be normal and not move from house to house, school to school.
Wow, talking about adoption, the spotlight on adoption, which is really not understanding that part of that process of RD just talking about now, he knows this is his family, but having to mentally and intentionally be aware that it is, because he still has these feelings of anxiety. We talked a little bit in brief in the first segment about the causes, the effect that it has on a child. So let's list out some of what those are. Distrust.
Yep. There's distrust. There's they can react negatively to what would be normal life situations that we would think about, change of school or a death in the family that happens now in their new family, and again, that can trigger some of the past traumas that they've had, and they'll think almost, it's not disassociating, but it's pulling back. It's pulling back that trust, and in some cases he maybe even sabotaging it.
It's a protection method, okay,
Yeah.
and even sabotaging, because it's a protection. I don't want to be hurt again, so I'm just going to go into my shell, or even I'm going to push you away, like you're saying, sabotage, because I know what's coming. That was very poignant at the end of the first break when Tammy was talking about overhearing RD on the phone with his uncle saying, I know what's coming next.
Yep.
They're going to come with, so this element of distrust, this doubt, lack of confidence, this is what the child is then carrying into his community. So, and John, can you speak to that, this community-wide effect that that's part of what I love about this program, that it's really making change community-wide, because it's not just the child in the child's home.
Correct. Well, and that's another part of it that really appealed to us. It's something that's a problem in our community. It's something we can spend some time and energy on and potentially fix. And what we really like about the program with Mike is that this could act as a springboard, if you will. If we could get this, hone it down, tweak it, and get it to it works, this could grow exponentially from our county to our state, and who knows, throughout the country.
And when we talk about it being a problem within the community, I was just thinking about it, and I hear you, because it's acting out at school, acting out at home, not learning the skills that you need in your job or when you're going into a university or in developing relationships with other people. That then becomes an employer's responsibility as well. So what you're looking at is these learned behaviors.
Correct, and if you don't fix it now, these problems will manifest themselves with these young people as they grow and continue to be problems in the community, maybe at a larger scale.
Well, how do you fix that then, Mike? I mean, what does this program essentially do? What do you have in place to help solve that issue? Well,
and to add something else about, we talk about the cycle of abuse and child protection, and if you talked about, they become adults and if they have these, untreated issues, they become parents themselves. They can lead to be abusive parents or neglectful parents themselves, and so we create a cycle. For adoptive families, what we're looking to do, as I mentioned, is to bring families together. There are a lot of these issues are simply just, let's work with the child, let's work with the parents about being able to maintain that trust and helping them get through some of the barriers that come up.
Communication?
It's communication, it could be as much as therapy, it could be mentoring, it could be also connecting adoptive children who, to another adoptive child who, may have gone through these themselves. And
The
so
networking aspect that you
part
were
of it.
talking about.
And as well as being able to help the parents, with each other and respite, and that's a big aspect of this that we're looking at is that sometimes, it's okay to build in a break. It's okay to be able to let them take skills that they're learning about trusting in the family that they're in and using and bringing those to another family that's close to them, and helping them be able to use those behaviors and be able to trust others to care for them and to know that they're not going to be abandoned, they're not going to be hurt, and that there's going to be consistency. And just because a change of school happens, or there's a birthday that comes around, or any other issue that comes along, a family member from their biological family they may still have contact with, this is their family forever. This is their forever family, and they're going to be there no matter what.
Tammy mentioned in one of the clips, and what you just said made me think about it, that she had been on the phone with the teacher and the principal of the school when RD had moved. Is that also an aspect in helping develop the relationship with the schools?
Yep. Well,
Helping them learn to
for
communicate.
parents who have children, they have infants and they grow. They have time. They develop relationships. Obviously, they bond with their child, and as they move into school age, they're there the first day of school. For adoptive parents, for in Tammy's case, you have a 15-year-old boy that all of a sudden is your son, and you're now showing up to school and saying, "Here's my son," and who, by the way, is maybe have this issue or maybe behind in school, and it takes the parents have to understand, how do I do that? How do I work with a child who may be in special education or may have special needs or is still getting through this process of adoption, which the process itself is very traumatic. And now they're in school and they're there every day, and they have to be able to hold those emotions in and pay attention to what they're supposed to do in school. So parents all of a sudden are faced with that, and that's being able to know how to do that and learn from others, and having an agency like us or any other agency to help them be able to go through that and partner with the school. She had a great experience. She had a school that understood and was able to talk, and they communicated back and forth. He's fine. He's doing great. That's what you would do for your child anyway. And now you have a new child in your home that's now part of your family, and you have to do that as well.
When we were sitting down with RD and Tammy, she did talk about how extensive there were hours of training that she needed to go through to become a candidate to becoming an adopted mother?
Yeah, you become qualified.
To be qualified to adopt a child. And yet there was still that, oh my gosh, how do I, and she did say that thankfully RD is communicative, because I can imagine that there are teens who, like you were talking about before, would withdraw and not want to communicate with the teacher, with the principal, with anybody. So by being able to have all of the adults on the same page, I think is a huge aspect of that.
Well, for Tammy to become an adoptive parent, she had to go through 30 hours of training and a very intensive home study process and background screening and all the things that we do to make sure that she is going to be a good parent to RD or any adoptive parent that goes through that process. But there's only so much that we can do. And when placement is made, Tammy and other families often talk about, how do I get ongoing help? I mean, me as a professional in the business, I have to get ongoing training and for my own professional career, but we don't necessarily ask that of adoptive parents. And that's not a matter of saying that, okay, everything's fine, we're moving on, but we focus on the front end of the system. We focus on the children in foster care, and our idea of this and doing this for so many years is recognizing that the day the gavel falls, there still is more work to be done.
You're talking about a systemic change in addition, which I can see why the foundation would be
Correct.
passionate about supporting that, because you're doing something that you're not renovating the starting process.
No.
You're adding on and enhancing so that parent or parents are not alone and the child is not alone, and they can continue to grow and develop. Adoption doesn't end
No.
on the day of.
It's actually a beginning. and it's actually the beginning of a new process. And the state of Florida and the child welfare system, and this is not a matter of neglecting that part of adoptive families or anything like that. Unfortunately, we're still a society that there is a tremendous amount of abused children, and the Tampa Bay area is one of the highest abuse rates in the state of Florida. So there are a tremendous amount of resources that are needed to be able to work with the front end of the system and work with children who are just coming into care. And there's a lot of work that goes into the adoptive process, but there are agencies that still want to be able to help, but there's so many resources needed on the other side of the system. We look at it as a start. It's a beginning of a new process, and it's a different set of circumstances now.
And when we come back, I want to talk about what those goals look like, but we've got to take another break. So also up next, we're going to go into our value tip of the week. So take a break. We'll be right back.
This show sponsored in part by
Our studio sponsor, the Nonprofit Leadership Center of Tampa Bay.
The Philanthropy Show is on demand every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at both thephilanthropyshow.com and YouTube/WatchMVVP TV.
How do you raise the money needed to fund the programs of a nonprofit agency? Hi, my name is Lorraine Faithful, and I am with the Nonprofit Leadership Center. Here are a few ideas of funding approaches. 1, ask individuals your agency serves, who are your customers, to pay an equal portion or part of the full cost of the services they receive. 2, offer a variety of fee structure or a sliding scale where some customers pay the full amount and others pay less than the actual cost. This could be based on organizational budget or number of employees. 3, ask for donations. 4, ask for customers to pay more than their fair share of the full cost of services. 5, seek fee-for-services grants from government, foundations, corporations, and federated funds. 6, seek full or partial scholarships from funding from the above sources to sponsor individuals. 7, seek donations for operating support. For additional information about these and other sources of nonprofit income, visit our website at nonprofitleadershipcenter.com.
Love that value tip and love this show, the Spotlight on Adoption. I want to talk about, we said in the last segment, this is not about revamping the initial process of bringing parents and children together, but it is about that support on the back end. So what are your goals for the program?
Well, first and foremost is to maintain forever families. We're in the business of maintaining families and helping children and families achieve their highest potential. And so if they're able to stay together and it is their forever family, we've achieved our goal right there. And to minimize the stats you gave at the beginning about the 10 or 25% of adoptions that dissolve or families that break up. If we're successful, we've done our job. But as you know, in doing this as a career, I recognize it's a societal impact as well. Children who need services are costing. They cost government funding. They cost school funding. They generate services, or they're a user of services, and all of those things are whether it be tax money or private money or whatever it may be. They're pulling from the need that others may have, and they certainly need it. But our goal is to be able to minimize that and be able to keep families together and help them move through the process of the adoptive process, which lasts forever. It's not just the day the gavel falls, and be able to help their children grow. And if they're able to, when they become adults, if they become successful, functioning adults who then have families and they're being able to be successful and hopefully stop that cycle of abuse and neglect that happens every day, then we've done our job, and we can sit back and be proud and know that we've made an impact on society.
That's wonderful. And like John had said earlier, the Foundation of Caring is really about funding those organizations that have a broad impact. We know that this is not just here, but it's continuing here. But you're also looking at a deep process, because you're looking at, this isn't just a single year project. How many years are you looking to do? How deep are we going?
Well, we're hoping to start off and keep it going. I mean, we're not looking for a one-time shot. It's going to take a number of resources to keep this program going, and we have a partner in the foundation. But it's going to take the community to be able to help us do this. Most programs like this are all privately funded. There really isn't any other funding out there, so we have to use our resources and our partners in the community to keep it going. So, the pilot here, we want to start it and be able to keep it going. We want to be able to look at maybe the first 3 years and see what our results are. But we don't want to stop after that. We want this program to be there forever, because there's always going to be families who are adopting. There's, unfortunately, and that's another goal of ours, we hopefully work ourselves out of business, but we haven't gotten there yet. There are still children coming into the foster care system. There are still children becoming available for adoption. So as in the future that we can see, there's always going to be children that are going to be adopted, and we're going to want to be there to be able to help those families.
Wow. Well, this is exciting and it's encouraging. And thank you, because I know that your foundation is heavily invested in the community and trying to make those changes for the betterment of it.
We're as Mike mentioned, it's basically a 3-year start project, and we're in for the long haul on this.
That's excellent. Wow. Well, loved having you guys talk about that. I'm going to segue us into what is our trademark segment, which is Truth or Care. And it's, we love talking with a variety of people that we get to talk to on the Philanthropy Show, because everybody comes to this from their heart. You can't necessarily work in the nonprofit community unless you're coming from your heart, even though it takes a lot of headspace too. A lot of times you're just like, ah. But this question is, what is your heart's definition of philanthropy? And Truth or Care being, is it a story, an example, a reason? What has prompted you to spend your life volunteering, working, doing what you do with the foundation and with Camelot? So, Mike, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, you definitely have to do this because you want to do it. I made a personal decision that I want to be able to do something that gave back to the community. I was a teacher at first before I started working in a nonprofit. But when I look at philanthropy, I look at it as you have to do something that's impactful. You have, whether you're a donor or whether you work in the field, and it doesn't have to be rich or have to be a millionaire to do it. As a matter of fact, we noticed that's about the majority of fundraised monies come from, in terms of percentage of income comes from people who don't make a lot of money because they're living the problem themselves, or they're there and they see it in their neighborhoods. But no matter what you do, if you're a donor or you're a foundation or you work in the field, you should try to make an impact. You should leave every day with, I've done something to improve either the group I work with or the society that I live in.
It means community. I love that. Which is why you're at Camelot Community Care.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this just to do it. You should be doing it because you want to make a change somewhere.
I like that. John?
For me, it's being part of the solution. I mean, it's so rewarding, so fulfilling, versus, as people say, instead of stroking the check, is to actually participate in the nuances of the program and help make it come to fruition, and be able to walk away and say, I helped create that.
Oh, yay.
And we're very thankful for them.
Well, and that's when then the two of you can come together and you can really affect that change. So that's wonderful. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing and inspiring our viewers as well. And, adoption is everywhere. So it's not just a Tampa Bay problem, but I appreciate what you're doing in Tampa Bay.
And thank you for putting a spotlight on it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being on the show. Loved having you both.
You got it.
And that's it. It goes by like that, doesn't it? That's another Philanthropy Show. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. And if you have an idea for the Philanthropy Show, please feel free to email us, tps@myvideovoice.com. See you next week.